Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. This is Mr. Shakespeare going with you on the 25th of September 2024. I am joined, as usual, by psychic medium and remote viewer, Liz Cross. How you doing today, Liz?
Oh, very well. And thank you for being a good sport to do this one. This was suggested, or it's a partial suggestion from somebody in the comments. They wanted to see if we could probe or channel, rather, not probe, channel some sort of old communist leaders in the field to see if that's where the UK and the US is headed. I mean, really, they wanted us to do Chairman Mao. Anyway, Mr. Shakespeare, we're so glad you're back. You were on holiday and now you're back.
I've
Um,
I've had a break. Yeah, it's been wonderful. Yeah. So anyway, it was all good. Did quite a lot of traveling around and different things, but
Good.
I had to come back and do this, didn't I?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't stay away.
I just
So I've got Karl Marx here. What would you like to know? He doesn't know.
Yeah, no. Does he believe in? Okay. So people attribute him with being the father of communism, but other people say that he was set up by the elites to come up with something called communism, which is true.
Oh, I thought you were saying it as a statement of fact, not a question. Were you set up by the elites to create a communist document, or are you the father of communism? They dubbed him. He's saying to me they have dubbed him the father of communism. But did you know that you were going to be dubbed the father of communism? No, he had no idea. Now, were
But was
you
he paid? Was he paid, way back when to come up with, if you like, an operation, a set of rules, a philosophy, whatever it was called, because, communism on the face of it, no, nobody actually ever wants to be in a communist society. It's always being forced upon them. And so, I mean, was he paid to basically set the foundations of what would then become known as communism?
Were you paid to set the foundations? Absolutely. And quite a substantial amount.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, it was quite clever what he did. So this is what people need to understand. Communism is a foisted on is a construct that was put on us. The guy that's supposedly the father of it was paid handsomely by the elites so that you can see everybody. It's a control structure that was put upon people. Okay, so some of the questions I think we need to ask him is is the United States going to be communist anytime soon? I mean, is it heading that way? And if it is, does it succeed?
Is the USA heading for communism anytime soon? Not in this century, no.
No. What about the United Kingdom?
What about the United Kingdom? Is that heading for There's already hallmarks of communism apparent
Oh
in the
yeah,
UK.
yeah. Well,
Now,
is
the big
is he
question,
referring to the current leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, and his policies?
what about Keir Starmer? Definitely communist. Okay. Is what he's saying his own personal thoughts, feelings, and opinions, not mine, not Shakespeare's. So, how this came about, the question was you need to channel Chairman Mao because getting rid of the farmland was something that Chairman Mao did, and it caused a lot of people to starve to death. And as we got in a previous probe with Keir Starmer, he is trying to, scale back British farming.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of theories about that. One theory is it's going to make us rely upon Europe. It's a way to get back into the European Union. What we got from him was it was going to bring in this high-tech Silicon Valley sort of country that's their vision. They want to be high-tech and just be solely dependent upon tech and get away with industry. But does he realize that Karl Marx is answering now? Does he realize that this is like a step towards communism? And Karl Marx is saying no, they don't realize, they're just looking at profits, right? They're looking at an easy way to generate cash. They want to be the tech hub of Europe, if not the world. I mean, that's what they're gearing up for. And by downscaling British farming, so I don't even know what else to ask at this point. I'm sure you do.
I do. I mean, yes, I do. Yeah. um,
Well, thank God for that.
well, yeah. I mean, we know it's a construct. We know that the construct has been put upon us. So the problem. Okay. All the reasons that America are not going to have communism foisted upon them is A, because of their armed to the teeth via the Second Amendment, B, because it's a much bigger, more populous country. One side of the question. Second side is England being singled out because it's not part of the European Union, which is essentially, a communist collective. Have we been singled out because of that?
Oh, nothing like Mr. Shakespeare ruffling everybody's feathers at 6 a.m. in the morning. Um, okay, yes, we get up early to do these probes. So the first question is the reason that the US will not go into communism in this century because of the right to bear arms. That's part of the reason, yes. And what is the other part? It's a capitalist society. People like to make money. It's all about making money here, right?
Right.
That's the basis. The healthcare does not want to go national. That will be the death knell. He is saying that if it did go national, that's a gateway to communism. So I'm asking him then, well, what about the NHS, the National Healthcare System in the UK? Do you believe that's a gateway to communism? And he's saying no. And I'm asking him why. And he says that's kind of over now. That it
Yeah,
cannot sustain
I think
itself.
the NHS is slightly different because it came in 3 years after the end of the Second World War, and it was done with, it wasn't done with communism in mind. It was done, as a sort of a grand collective. So, yeah, it's different. Yes, and if they did start to do that in the US, yeah, Marx is probably correct. So, I don't know. I mean, okay, will they? How far down the line towards communism do they achieve in the next 20 years in the UK?
The next 20 years in the UK, how far down the line do they achieve communism? By tracking and tracing everyone and everything.
Right, but I mean, it's not a full-blown communist country within 20 years, is it? Is that what he's saying?
Is it
It
a
is or it isn't?
full-blown communist country in 20 years? It's really heading in that direction. Monitoring the citizens, he says, is step one.
Of course.
Okay. And I'm saying, why do you say that? What is it about? Because now you can track and trace and prosecute. So now you're monitoring for any sort of different opinion than the narrative, right? It's easy to root people out. When you have a narrative that is going against the government, and it cannot be rooted out, that narrative builds, it grows, and it eventually catches on and you still have free thinking, free thought. Do you believe free speech is dead in the UK? Pretty much, he says. And I'm
Yeah.
saying, okay, so, what do you mean about tracking and tracing everyone? Well, now you're going to know if people are congregating in certain areas. Um, if they find that maybe five people are pushing a narrative that is against the government, and maybe they're using social media to do so, and everybody's being tracked and traced, and they're meeting up in a public place, well, then they know who these five people are. They root them out and they prosecute them. That's what he's saying. um and I see what he means. Like, he says that's the basis of communism, is not having an opinion that is different from the government agenda, the government narrative, not being able to speak about it, not
Right.
being
So
able
why
to
does he
spread
why
it.
do, does he think then that Starmer's plan to make, England have no farms, rely on other people for food, but make it the tech hub central? Why would anybody want to come and set up a tech business in a communist area such as England if that's what it ends up, when they can go and do it in a freer America?
Why would anybody want to set it up? Well, there's going to be incentives to do so, kickbacks and incentives, but mainly the tech hub is going to be watching, tracking, and tracing, right? So whereas Starmer's thinking it's going to be this, startups and apps and all these, weird and wonderful things that we get from time to time that either take off and some of them don't. That's what Starmer's vision is. But in the end, in order to save their idea, it will actually be the companies coming in to monitor the citizens, the residents,
But
the
at the
inhabitants.
behest of who? Who? Because Starmer then is obviously, he's being misguided, or he's naive. So if these tech companies are coming to do that, at the behest of who
At the behest
wants
of
them
who?
to do that?
It'll be it will be the government in many years down the line, because of the amount of expenditure to bring the UK into this tech hub, which is going to be a failed experiment, by the way,
Hmm.
totally failed. So therefore, in order to save face, they'll have to have something to show for it. And what he's saying is that it will be by way of monitoring. If your job is to create video recognition, CCTV cameras, track and trace, cashless society, security, well, that's every company's dream, right? They're going to make a fortune out of tracking and tracing the UK citizens. So in the end, what is going to be residual of this attempt to make the UK Silicon Valley is going to be security. So you will have internet security set up there, but of course that is to the detriment of its citizens. Um, that's what I'm getting. So that's where you see this push into communism. You're not allowed to drive down the road at this time, or you're gonna. So what Karl Marx is saying, and you're already getting pay per mile over there. I mean, there's talk about pay per mile. Um, he says they're going to give eventually, and they're using the green agenda to do so, to push the narrative. And they genuinely believe that that's what they're doing? And he's saying no. He's saying they know exactly what they're doing. But I'm saying, okay, that's contradictory, because you're saying Keir Starmer doesn't realize that he's on the road to communism. Not yet, but he will. Okay. So he's saying, Marx is saying to me that people will have allocated times of when the cars are allowed to be on the road. So, Mr. Shakespeare, you get a pass and you're allowed to be out between 8 and 10 in the morning, do what you need to do. And if you need more than that, you will have to apply and you will have to pay for your time on the road, right? Now, I'm saying, is this only pertaining to vehicles? He says, yes, in the beginning, it will only pertain to vehicles. And I'm saying, but what about the pay per mile? Well, what happens when pay per mile comes out? That's not going to generate enough income because, the UK is a very small place. You don't really need to drive miles and miles and miles to do what you need to do. It's convenient to use a vehicle in a lot of places because the public transport may be non-existent, especially if you're down in Cornwall and these, back into nowhere places. But now you're going to have to pay per time to use your car. So, and to be out causing pollution. Now that's what he's saying to me. That is way off in the future, but it's these incremental steps to get there. And before you know it, Marx is saying to me, you will never be able to undo communism. Once they have this strong, they sink their teeth in, that it's you can't undo it. How are you going to undo it if everybody who goes against the government narrative is prosecuted or vilified?
Right.
Are you still there? Is anybody
Yeah,
there?
I'm there, but you're just, what can I say? I mean, we're regurgitating a lot of the same things that we're doing over and over again. I mean, we're coming up, you know, the plans for the UK are not good for whatever reason. The plans for America, for whatever reason, are better, even though there are people that would love America to go down the communist route. I'm sure there would be. However, there's a reason why America's a republic. There's a reason why, they escaped the crown and England and everything. And, their goal is to, America's goal is to make money. Everything is money orientated in America. However, if they carry on down the road of communism in the UK, they're going to get some more immigrants because I'll go back and live over in America. I'm not going to stay in the UK with that. So I'm more than happy to move back to the US. I've done it before. I'll do it again. So
But But I see what he's saying, right? Okay, yes, we're still going down the same road, but it's interesting how we're getting different lots of information. Well, before we got pay per mile. Now we're
yeah,
hearing
but
from
Liz,
Mark
hold on. Let
that
me just
that's not
address
going
that.
to
We
work.
already have. Let me address that. Look, we already have paper mile. It's called the tax and the duty and the fuel. When we fill up our cars with gasoline, petrol, or diesel, if I drive 50 miles or if I drive 500 miles, I'm already paying more. I'm paying the same amount, but I pay more because 50 miles worth, I'll use fuel, and 150 I'll use fuel, and 500 I'll use fuel. So we've already got pay per mile in. Okay. The paper mile that they want to do is I think they're trialing it through a couple of outlets. One seems to be a scam outlet in Birmingham. They're trying to scare everybody into that. I don't think it's to do with it. I think it's more to do with get people out of their cars. Again, they hate the middle class. Okay, they don't like the aspirational class. We had this discussion off camera many years ago, when there were just the very rich, the elite, the landowners, and were the poor. Okay, they could deal with that because the poor had no rights, no votes, no nothing. And then the rich owned everything, and that's the way they want it. And then since then, the middle class has come out of it. They're better off than the poor, but they're nowhere near as rich as the rich. And those are the people they hate the most, the aspirational classes. Those are the ones they're trying to, tax into oblivion, stop movement, doing everything. Those are the ones they're going after. Yeah. So they're doing it here, they're doing it in America, they're doing it everywhere. It's been this ongoing thing. If you could ever have a conversation with one of these so-called elites, those are the people they'll tell you they hate the most, not the poor. They're not bothered about the poor. The poor have no votes, have no voice, have no nothing, because they rely on the government for largesse. They rely on payouts from the government in one way or another. It's the aspirational middle class that they don't like, and those are the ones they're going after. Those are the ones they're trying to crush.
Okay, so let's ask him. Is it the aspirational middle class that is a danger? Ooh, okay, you're right, is what he's saying. Okay. They're opinionated. They're still somewhat free, and they're
Mm.
trying to find even more freedom.
Yeah.
Part of being aspirational middle class, he says, is buying your freedom. You think that freedom can be bought, and you're trying to do so by obtaining more money.
Yeah, but also that if you have more money than somebody who doesn't, that if you don't like where you are, you can move. If you don't like the area of the country, because of whatever, you can move to a different area. If you live in public housing, social housing, you have no chance. You can't do anything. You're stuck where you are, and you don't have money. Gives you the choice and the freedom to make the choice. So if you have more money, you can have more choices, and that's what they don't like. Choices equal
Yes,
freedom. They don't like freedom with these people, and we're going back to serfdom. The Middle Ages of serfdom, where the poor didn't have any choice. That's what they would like for some reason.
yes, but they made provisions in the UK, and I don't know about the US because it's a state by state basis, but in the UK, they made provisions that if you're building a development with X amount of houses or flats, a 30% or whatever the percentage was or what it is now, I don't know, but a certain amount of percentage, a certain percentage had to go to social housing. So even if you were aspirational, and of course your definition of middle class over there is different to our definition of middle class here, but if you're trying to get on the property ladder and to buy your freedom away from maybe a terrible area, and I'm not saying that all people that live in social housing are terrible. Please don't think I'm saying that, but there's certainly a lot more problems in areas with social housing. And yet you have to buy your property and you are forced to live next door to some, social housing. People in social housing are bad, but the cost of property is so bad in London now anyway.
It's not even just the property. I mean, the Brits seem to be obsessed with owning property. They always have been. You go to Germany and most people don't own their own property. They own cars and things like that, but they don't own their own property. They're quite happy to be renters. It's only the Brits that are obsessed with it. France, not so. Not quite as free and easy as Germany from a point of view, but we always want to be an Englishman's home is his castle and all that stuff. We're always trying to aspire to owning our own property, you know. But obviously, ownership equals liability. If you own it, you're liable for it, every single thing. So you've got to be careful of that. When I say middle class, by the way, I'm talking about if you take 100% of the population, the middle class goes from somewhere from 10 to 90%. Those are all the middle class. So at the very top of the aspirational people, you will find, some of the people that have made people like the guy who owned Dyson. They've made millions, but they're not part of the elite, but they've got a lot of money. They're right up there towards the 90% end. And at the other end, you've got the people that, I would class from about 10% onwards who don't necessarily own their own house. Maybe they've got a decent income and a job, but they just rent, but they're not subject to, government handout, that sort of thing. The more you are on government handout, the more you are controlled by the government. Yeah. And I know there are people that absolutely need it, and I'm not saying otherwise. But you take the money from these people, you are controlled by these people. Yeah. So they don't like, losing control of people. So they want to get more people in that situation. This is why they want to go towards things like, what do they call it? Universal basic income and things like that. Well, somebody at the top of the middle class range, if you like, my 90%, they're never going to need UBI or anything like that. So anyway, this
So
has
let's ask
become,
this question. Let's ask this. Is communism the fundamental aspect of communism? Is it all about controlling people? Absolutely, he's saying 100% complete control. And the reason for that is you can filter all the money to the top.
of course,
And he said essentially that's what communism is. It's about filtering the money from the bottom to the top. And I'm saying, okay, you're saying filtering from the bottom to the top, but I would think that communism is the universal basic income, or certainly that's what we may have as an idea, or handing people benefits and social housing and reducing their flexibility of moving up the social mobility ladder, financial mobility ladder. And he's saying no. He's saying no. It's ultimately about hoarding all the money.
of course. Because you are then through a classless society, i.e., the very rich and the poor. I mean, you've got to think back to who set Karl Marx up to produce a system that, again, would just basically suck everything out of everything and put it into the top, the elites. At the end of the day, there are more of us than there are them. They need us to do the work, or they certainly did in the industrial era and in the agricultural era. They need the people to do the work. They just don't want to give them anything for it. You know, I
Is
mean,
it, let's
this is
ask. Let's ask. That's a good point. Is it the fact that they want people to do the work for them, but they don't want to pay them? Absolutely 100% correct is what he's saying. Now, he was telling me about the national healthcare system. I think it's going to revert, as what he's telling me, into a payer system, a paid based system. It
you mean
will
the
end up
US.
being, no, for you over there. It will end up being a subscribed system. So people will have to have an NHS subscription. So almost like an insurance, yes, but it will be run and controlled by the government because he's telling me it's just like this big, black hole of no money. It's in debt. Like it's just there's nothing there. It's nothing to make it innovative. There's not enough money to support the system. So eventually, and I'm saying how long before the NHS becomes a subscription based system? And he's saying, what, how many years? About 5 to 10 years, where you're starting to see that we can't run it like this anymore. People are going to have to contribute, but is it going to be means tested? Yes. So you're going to have the people that are not, bound by social uh, benefits, social housing. Those people will be exempt, but the people that are, have sort of a not necessarily even disposable income, because that's been squeezed out with inflation, but it will be people that earn more money or have more money, people that own property, or what about people that rent? People that rent, but private people as opposed to government funded people will have to pay for the subscriptions for the NHS. So it looks like it is going to swap over to a payer system. And is that going to slow the effects of possibly this incremental, steps to communism? It will. It will, because you're going to start paying people more.
They're always finding ways of doing that. That's what they've done since time immemorial. So
Yeah. Wow. It was interesting. I mean, it's sort of a lot of confirmation. So why is it the USA? You say not this century, but is the USA heading towards communism in the next century? Yeah, it's the drip factor, right? Just little drips in here and there, just little dotted spots of communism. But again, don't forget, and he's saying it as well, at some point we will see a split in the US. Is that because of, potential communism? Yes. So we're gonna see a split here. We're gonna have a breakaway. Is it the fact that the states are in control? Do you think that slows down the effects of, moving towards communism? He says absolutely, and the states will, some states will choose to break away. When the stronghold is becoming too much, you'll see mass migration, he says, into what area they politically align with, and then you'll see a break.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Interesting. And a lot of confirmations there. So thanks, Mr. Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm. No problem.